Hello, and welcome to Transaction Trending, the Electronic Transactions Association podcast exploring the cutting edge of payments and fintech with the leaders and disruptors of our industry. I'm John Losh, Senior Director of Membership and Customer Insights here at the ETA, the largest trade association representing the payments industry. Today, we have the pleasure of speaking with Leo Patching, the CEO of Compliant, who has recently been recognized for their groundbreaking work in compliance solutions. Compliant was selected as a winner of ETA's Most Innovative Product or Solution of the Year. Compliant was first started in 2021 with a vision of transforming regulatory compliance from a business obstacle into a strategic advantage through intelligent automation. Leo, welcome to Transaction Trending. Thank you so much for joining us today, and congratulations on this honor. So Leo, let's set the stage a little bit. Let's start with telling our audience a little bit about compliance, what innovation means to you, and how you guys are reshaping the compliance landscape.
Yeah, happy to do that. So our name, obviously, Compliant with a K. We focus very closely on the compliance space. Our kind of genesis story of the company was around looking at a problem statement of what was the challenges facing the space. Why was it so difficult for certain categories of merchants to access financial services? And having looked at that from lots of different ways, regulation forwards and backwards, where we came out was one of the challenges that the payments industry and financial services industry at large had struggled with was addressing especially in the B2B space, capturing the self-reported data from an applying business, running the alphabet soup of verifications that were required, and decisioning that application in line with the various regulations at whatever stage they're at, in a way that they could provide both a fast decision, but also managing risk in an effective way. And so where we look at kind of innovation and compliance, a lot of it is not recreating the wheel. There's a lot of institutional IP within these incredible organizations that have served customers over years. It's actually finding a way to transform in a digital format a lot of the ways in which we're serving customers in order to meet the standards that they expect in today's fast-moving environment.
That's really interesting. Let's dive into a little bit more on that. So Compliance AI analyzes compliance data across different compliance against industries and across the different merchant types. Have there been any unexpected patterns or insights that have come up that kind of help form some of those strategies and the product roadmap?
Yeah. And again, one of the things we talk about is in the realm of risk and underwriting and kind of with our customers, looking at how they serve their customers, more data is more. And so that is not true when you are manually filtering through point solutions and pulling in data from different sources. Whereas kind of a lot of what we've looked at is let's take the application data. We work with some best-in-class partners. There's a lot of data out there that you can get at. We work on a lot of kind of data triangulation. So hit multiple sources, find ways to really understand and assess what is a key driver in being able to proactively provide a good experience for a merchant by letting the good actors through and catching the bad actors at the kind of inception of the application as well, tripwires that kick out information. We've seen one of the trends we've talked about a little bit is a lot of it used to be focused on this very, like you think of fraud tools and kind of in a shield or a defense. And it's this very reactive, like, how do we protect ourselves? And a lot of what we talk about is owning the compliance muscle as a superpower for how can you accelerate growth? How do we kind of tap into what does a good customer look like? How do we get those customers through quickly? Every payments professional will be able to tell you that time to money is a really key metric. And so if we can get a merchant activated 7 days earlier, there's an ROI you can instantly calculate. And so looking at it from that sort of angle, we've also found there are fraud vectors and there are ways in which you have to do kind of a lot of work to fight off bots. but we look at a lot of compatibility. So finding ways to use data to drive the compatibility of a merchant with a sponsor bank program or an acquiring processes program, and finding ways to really drive that and use the data to provide those experiences.
That's interesting. So it's not necessarily just on the customers themselves, but it's also within the ecosystem that they're navigating in to make sure that that's not throwing up any barriers as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Wow, that's fascinating. So we've talked a little bit before, and you mentioned it that like things are changing, right? That compliance is an ongoing evolution that not only do the rules stay the same, not even in the same states, but things just constantly and continue to change. How is compliance leveraging some of that data in order to stay ahead of those regulatory trends before they actually become formal requirements?
Yeah, this is one that's very close to my heart. Kind of prior to payments, one of the companies I ran was in renewables, so another kind of regulated industry. And my accent belies the fact that I'm from London, moved over here, and so for me, the first business venture I had here was in a different industry, but in a regulated space. And I had operated successfully in the UK, single market, and very cavalier, tried to launch a very similar business in the US and ran into the buzzsaw of reality that was this is not just a single country to operate in, it's 50 different countries with city, state, like the regulation environment here. There's lots of different takes on this of regulatory capture and other elements. But when it boils down to it, there is a lot of complexity that exists within operating in North America. And then you have kind of the transitions into Canada, kind of different markets. Um, we look at, again, in this space, building kind of for the future is architecting for a configurable world where you can you can find one set of regulation in one environment, another in another. A lot of that is deterministic rules. Those rules need to be updated and evolve over time, but they can be automated, and that is a key area of automation that can be a force multiplier on the internal teams. Take away some of that complexity and redundancy internally, but when you architect for that from the front and from the beginning forwards, you allow yourself to operate at speed and at scale.
It's really helpful for that background. I'm curious about, we've talked a little bit about kind of what you all are focused on internally. Let's focus on externally for a second and kind of looking from an industry-based perspective, right? A lot of the rules and the regulations we're all required to adhere to. How important is collaboration outside and across the industry on different knowledge sharing forums or through networking? How important is that to try kind of drive the future of compliance?
Yeah, kind of. I think you and I were joking just before. Compliance is definitely a team sport, and it's one of the things. We like, obviously we're looking forward to being at Transact. We participate actively in ETA for a lot of the reasons around this. Being it is there's so much institutional IP, there's so much expertise in the industry that has operated over time to build the industry together. We have found a lot of strength in we have a great expert advisory board of people who've been in the space for a long time, of innovators who've used AI and robotics in different areas. We find a great value in canvassing opinion from a broad perspective, because oftentimes when we are putting software out into the market, one of the requirements for us in building a differentiated offering is having an opinionated pieces of software. You don't want to just put out a configurable blank canvas, because a lot of the people we work with, optionality and kind of too many choices is a fallacy. People want greater confidence in the choices that you're presenting them, and so we have to build a confident, opinionated approach. And to do that, you have to take a lot of opinions, cipher them down, and make them contextualize for the outcomes you're looking to produce. We spend a lot of time bringing in diverse perspectives, ways of doing things, and experience anecdotal from people who've been in the industry running these processes from a long time.
So, what about pivoting for a little bit? What about for those that may be newer to the industry? Right here at the ETA, we've focused and invested a lot of time in some online courses like the ETA Payments Compliance 101 and 201. We have other conferences like the Payments Compliance Toronto. We'll have one here in DC. How
Yeah.
important is education or other industry resources and kind of helping making sure that everybody is working within the same ecosystem, but also helping to train up those staff that might not have as much expertise as some of the people that you're referencing?
Yeah, and that's also a big benefit of the industry at large as well, is welcoming people in, and finding ways to kind of bring people who have expertise from different areas. So we brought in a UX UI designer who came from a different space but had an amazing aesthetic, and we've seen customer experience being kind of prioritized over time. And so we actually put her through one of the 101 courses, and she got great benefit and used a lot of the resources that we've had there. I think I mentioned as well, we've used the guidelines of ETA in underwriting, risk management, periodic review as an independent third party approach, because we can't readily share artifacts from one customer to another for what's best practice. And so having an industry body that can produce these artifacts that can be used as a point of reference and a benchmark for what good looks like, I think that's what a lot of us are looking at. Then finding ways to be in an environment like the DC event. I know, to my shame, I missed it last year. We'll be there obviously this year. But being in those spaces and hearing from the horse's mouth as you get closer to the seat of power and the regulators, and especially in a time of volatility as we find ourselves in now, it's a really valuable thing to stay kind of ear to the ground and be able to move and pivot as things are changing.
I'm glad that you brought up the ETA industry guidelines. We have the underwriting guidelines and the PayFac guidelines that both really
Yep.
help people see kind of, as you mentioned, some of those guardrails and what should you be looking at and helping people think beyond some of those resources and really helping to make sure that you're all looking at either your underwriting or running a payment facilitator from the same perspective as the rest of the industry. So that's great to hear that you guys are using it in a lot of the work that you're doing.
Yeah, and I know you. Just to give a shout out to the committees, it's always interesting. We look at who's on those committees. Incredible people, generously giving their time to produce these artifacts that are of value to the industry at large.
Yeah, and for all they're open to all ETA members. So if your company is a member of the ETA, we have about 16 or 17 different business committees that focus on everything from AI to risk, fraud, and security to compliance to B2B, you name it. We have these different working
Yeah.
groups that are writing guidelines and other resources to kind of help, again, with that professional development of training throughout the industry. As we kind of bring our conversation to a close here, I want to look back at your journey. As you kind of had this journey of building compliant, has there been any particular lesson or point of innovation or something that really just sticks out to you that would be a good lesson to learn for others that are looking to kind of grow either a company or an organization in the payments industry?
Yeah, there are a lot. It's never a straight line, taking anything from zero to one. Um, I think one of the big things we've learned, and I think over time you kind of bring this together, is some humility in knowing that there is a lot of value that has been created. There are some incredible organizations, and I think this almost kind of shape of disruption, or kind of a lot of the hubris that people don't like that comes out of Silicon Valley, has been, um, everything is rubbish. We're going to start again, and we have discovered, kind of very clearly in working with some of the larger organizations, some of the member organizations at ETA, that there is a lot of value, and you can find a ton of value in what the bigger orgs are doing, what legacy providers have kind of laid the groundwork for. A lot of what we do is apply kind of first principles thinking to problems that those organizations are solving for or have not managed to solve for in isolation for themselves. A lot of them are very generous with their time and space as well. So we look kind of very clearly at how do we approach problems that the industry is facing, things that need a solution, And rather than build software, we try to like build towards outcomes. And so, because nobody wants just another piece of software, they are trying to kind of push their business forward, find ways to create value. And so, where we can partner with the industry and find great ways to build our business is identifying outcomes. And I think we've talked about this as well. Kind of our big approach, one of our superpowers has been product-led discovery. And so we spend a lot of time interviewing, talking to customers, talking to prospects, talking to partners, and understanding what are the pain points, what actually needs to be addressed, what is underserved today. And then from kind of going back to the first principles piece, if there's a requirement in place today, let's question that. Let's see if that needs to exist going forwards. If there are any unnecessary steps in a process, let's remove those, remediate that before you start trying to automate or throw kind of AI at stuff. Let's do the kind of fundamentals first. Once we've got there, you can really then optimize elements, accelerate cycle times, and find ways to bring automation in where it's necessary and actually drives a distinct business value. And I think there's a lot of value in partnering, optimizing, and then kind of building to the future together.
Leo, I absolutely love what you said about the collaboration that takes cross against payments. As you said earlier, it really is a team sport. While so many of us might be on different sides of processing a transaction, ultimately, at the end of the day, we have to make sure that it's happening. We have to make sure that it's secure and that we're complying with all the rules and the regulations that have been set up and outlined for us. So I couldn't agree more with what you said there about just how amazing the collaboration is across the payments industry. ETA is just excited to be a small part in helping to facilitate that. So, well, that brings us to a close of today's episode of Transaction Trending. Leo, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, John. Great to chat. Appreciate you, buddy.
Well, for all of our listeners, thank you so much for joining us. Conversations like this remind us that compliance isn't just about following rules. It's about building trust and creating a space for innovation to flourish. Congratulations again to the entire compliant team for being selected as a winner of the ETA's Most Innovative Product or Solution of the Year. For our listeners who'd like to learn more, you can learn more about Compliant at compliant.com. Also, don't forget to check out ETA's upcoming payments compliance conferences. We'll have one in Toronto, May 13th through the 14th, and one in the DC area in November 5th through the 6th, where these critical conversations will continue. Also, for those looking to learn more about their compliance knowledge on the go or at any time, the Payments Compliance 101 and 201 courses are available online at any time at electran.org/education. This has been another episode of Transaction Trending. From the ETA, I'm John Losh, and we'll see you next time as we continue to explore the people and innovators shaping the future of payments.